Greetings and welcome my friends. This is the Rainmaker, a Dimir mill deck featuring a lot of new cards from everyone's favorite racing set, Aether Drift. Although we're out to mill the opponent, we're not using the usual suspects you'll see in a traditional mill deck, minus the 1 mill artifact that's been adopted by mill players around the world. We're surprising opponents with a new artifact that hasn't seen much play, but ends up being the backbone of our deck. We're playing removals and discard, as well as a bit of bounce to help reuse some of our effects. It's a combination that puts plenty of stress on the opponent and often ties up their resources while we run away with the game using card draw and board control. Let's make it rain some cards up in here. We're playing the full set of Hopeless Nightmare, the 1 mana enchantment that forces the opponent to discard a card. And when it enters play, it also hits the opponent for 2 damage, something that can actually be critical during the game since we do want to get to max speed. Later in the game, we can pay 3 mana and sacrifice the Nightmare to get a Scry 2, which can set up our draws and help us find more ammo. Fear of Isolation is a small 2/3 flyer that comes down for only 2 mana. As part of the cost for playing out this freakish abomination, we have to return a permanent we control to our hand. That's a perfect way to reuse some of our enchantments with enters play abilities like the Nightmare, or even one of our removal enchantments like the Momentum Breaker or Nowhere to Run. Because it has so many arms, it can fly and get in for damages to help advance our speed until we max out. If you need a hand, just call this guy. Riverchurn Monument is the latest weapon for mill players all over the world. It's cheap, only 2 mana to play out and only 1 to activate. It also has exhaust for a big mill effect to wipe out a good chunk of the opponent's library in one fell swoop. Although built to mill, we're using this almost as a decoy. We have another artifact that will mill the opponent, but at a much faster rate. Let them worry about this one while we snipe their library with the other. Momentum Breaker is a great removal, able to take out men even if they're indestructible, but only if the opponent has only 1 guy in play. If there are more, this will only thin out the herd. If they don't have any men, it'll force them to discard a card, which works fine when the opponent is playing a deck low on men. And if they do get something down after we've played it out, we can always bounce it back to our hand to reuse later. It should have been named Opponent Breaker. Nowhere to Run is another removal enchantment that hits enemy men with a toughness of 3 or less. What makes it great is it does have flash, so we can play it out at instant speed, and it makes ward abilities useless. Tired of having to pay extra mana to remove an enemy with ward? Now you don't. We can target them like they are vanilla men. Smell you later, bro. Silver Scrutiny is a fantastic draw spell that we've gotten away from using when we play blue decks, but we're bringing it back for another go-around in a deck where it can do more than just draw us cards. It is a sorcery, but we can fire it off at instant speed to draw 3 cards or less. But if we have the mana, we can draw 4 cards or more, and the more is always better when we have our very next card on board, as well as the benefit of max speed. Aether Syphon is a new artifact that we can use to draw a card. Sure, it costs 2 mana, but that's a fair price to pay. It does have Start Your Engines, so we can get the race started off if we haven't already. Once we have max speed, every time we draw a card, we mill the opponent for 2. It doesn't seem like a lot until you see how we make it rain. With a Scrutiny for 3, that's us drawing 3 cards, and the opponent sending 6 cards to the bin. And if we have a second Syphon, it only gets worse for the opponent. Plus the Syphon is a little shark. How can you not like that? It's starting to smell like GG's and mozzarella. Extra mozzarella. Hour of Victory is a sneaky enchantment that costs 3 to play out, but comes with a 2/2 zombie token. We can use the token to get in for damages, or as a blocker if we're under attack. Once we get max speed, we can pay 2 and sacrifice it to fetch out any card in our deck. Sure, it costs 5 mana in total, but spread out over 2 turns you will hardly notice the cost. This town ain't big enough is another way we have of bouncing one of our permanents while also sending back something the opponent played out that we don't want them to have. If the opponent doesn't have any cards in hand, we can combo up and send back one of their men at the end of their turn and return a Nightmare back to our hand to play out on our turn and make them toss their guy. It's a great way to reuse some of our cards while delaying the opponent and giving our artifacts a chance to do their thing. Deadly Cover-Up is a powerful sweeper that can exile something from the opponent's grave and all copies of it from the game. Anything that's too big or is difficult to deal with can be wiped out with minimal fuss. Plus, this is the best way to deal with opponents who play out men in numbers that might be too much for our individual removals to take out. Delay them as much as possible, then clear out their board once we hit the required 5 mana. Get gone girls, we'll smell you later. For lands we're playing 3 Demolition Field, the land that destroys opposing non-basic lands. Man lands and lands that generate token men are rather rampant, and we need something to be able to eliminate those from the game. 3 Avishkar Raceway, the land that we can tap along with 3 mana to loot. Plus it has start your engines, so we get to zoom right away. 4 Soured Springs, the desert that hits the opponent for 1 damage when it enters play. It's really here to help us zoom. 4 Gloom Lake Verge, the island that becomes a duel when we have an island or swamp in play. 5 Swamps, and 5 Islands. Playing the deck is only slightly complicated, as you'll need to be able to judge when is the right time to play certain cards out. Some decisions will be easy, such as playing out Nightmares, but there will be times when you have to decide between 2 or even 3 different lines of play, and being able to determine what the opponent is playing can be a very critical skill. If you can figure out what their future line of plays will be, then you can make better decisions about what to play out. Do you go for mill, removals, or do you want to set up the tutor or draw? Along the way, you'll also want to be able to set up a way to get to max speed to fully unlock the Syphon as early as possible. It's not a difficult deck to pilot, but it's not easy either. Gotta shark them all. That's the deck, boys. Let's go play some games.
Do you want to play a game?
This is Mars, the god of war. I don't know why he'd be playing, but here we are. We're kicking things off with a shuffler special. Is there any better way to start a game? There is not. We do have a pair of our enchantment removals, which could help us out early while we wait for more lands to arrive. Keep your pants on. We draw a 3rd land right away, which is excellent. We'll go with the Verge this time, and maybe we can save the Springs for when we want to zoom. The opponent goes through their 2nd turn without any plays, so we'll go ahead and play out our Momentum Breaker and get some idea of what they're holding. Also zoom. They toss a Stone Brain. They must clearly be on Kermit's toes. Well, speak of the devil. Indestructible, sure, but it's also not going to hit us for damages anytime soon. We'll play out our Springs, which is also a desert, and we'll zoom to speed 2 just for playing a land. They play out a Lockdown. It's going to snag our Momentum Breaker. We could sacrifice it for 2 life, but there's also the possibility we could bounce the Lockdown later. We'll play out Hour of Victory. It'll give us a 2/2 that can attack and get us to a higher speed, and we definitely want to zoom. They play out a Kaya, which feels kind of weird, but the god of war must know what he's doing.
I like a good fight. Notice I didn't say fair. I found an eyewitness.
This turn we'll play out a Syphon, and we can start using it to draw cards, and hopefully we can begin to make it rain cards. We'll send in our token for a hit on Kaya. We know they'll likely block, which keeps their men to a minimum.
The killer can't silence everyone.
They play out a Wishclaw Talisman. Looks like they'll be able to tutor up a card, then use another Lockdown to prevent us from using their talisman. Why not just go for max speed and use Hour of Victory? We'll snipe their token, and that will clear the way for our zombie to get in a hit. But they've got a removal at the ready, and that'll save their Kaya from dropping in loyalty. Nice job of keeping the pants on.
Found an eyewitness.
We get a monument, but is it a good time to play it out? They could be sitting on another Lockdown, which would mean we'd lose the monument along with the nowhere to run. Let's drop it in. We've got more card draw than they do despite their good board position. Then we'll draw with the Syphon. We do want to get more mana, especially with artifacts that require activations and a scrutiny in hand.
Aha! Another clue.
You want cards in the grave, we'll help you out, bro. Here we go, they fire off their combo, and we've been taken to Combo Town. So impressive. Our Syphon is still on board though, and that's the artifact they really should be worried about. We draw another Syphon, but what we really need is a way to hit them for damage, like a Nightmare or a Springs. Any men will likely get killed off before we can attack with them though, so those wouldn't be all that good. And there's a Nightmare, let's land it and zoom. We are 1 away from max speed, and we'll be able to run over their hopes and dreams.
Keep calm and stay focused.
The lands are coming along nicely now. We'll play out a second Syphon and draw. We get a third cover up, so we're ready for the army they don't have. They get a Paragon down and use it to play a land. That's such an amazing combo. More impressive than the first one they pulled off.
I could use a little help.
We'll use a cover-up to clear out this ragtag team. We can't collect evidence, but that's fine for now. We draw a Momentum Breaker, and we can use it to snipe their Kermit's toes. It's like turn 12, and Mars, the god of war, has not inflicted any pain on us whatsoever.
No victim goes unavenged.
It's unfortunate, but we have to use another cover-up to isolate Kermit's toes, then we can play out the Momentum Breaker to finally off their indestructible goon. No wait, they have an instant speed guy they can play out. For reals? Their combos are too strong, so we'll get on out of here and move on to the next game. No wait, get out of town, Charlie Brown. Also GG's. This is Soilin' Their Pants. No wait, it's Sholin Monk. Welcome to the big show. Wow, that is a hand. We're missing black, or we might give this a shot. Mull. Then we get a shuffler special with a monument, a nightmare, a removal, a fear, and a wipe. At least we can play out most of our hand with what we got. Keep your pants on. Let's ship the cover up. It's the only card we can't play out. We'll start with the Springs and take it from there. They drop a Nightmare, so this must be as close to a mirror match as the matchmaker can find. You know how much it loves mirror matches. We'll toss the monument. It's the most expendable card we've got. I'm valuing everything else a bit more. We'll drop our own Nightmare on them and give them a taste of what they gave us. They toss out a Kaido, eat it like a pie. Let's hit them with another Nightmare. Fair is fair. We draw a Momentum Breaker, and it's too bad we didn't draw it before we played out the Nightmares. We could be on speed 3 right now, but it's never too late to zoom. and make them toss another card. They play out a fear with many limbs. We've got 2 of those in hand. Then they replay their nightmare. We'll send one of our fears packing. Gotta love these shuffler special games where it's impossible to draw a third land. Well, speak of the devil. We'll play out a fear and get a nightmare back, then play it again. Also, zoom zoom. They have a nowhere to run, but they still have to toss a card. We get some bounce, but this turn we have to play out our Syphon. It's card draw and a way to get ahead. They bounce their enchantments for the thrill and joy of it. But we've got our pants on and we're in for the long game. We draw a monument, which is not bad at all. They spring a scroll shift on us, but we can draw before we toss a card. We get an island, and that's a bit more important right now, so we'll let the monument go. They play a nightmare for the thrill of it. We've got no cards to toss, and we can gain life with the momentum breaker. We draw a Scrutiny, and that could be the key to breaking out of this low card state we've been forced into. We'll just hang on to it for now. They don't do anything, so we'll activate our Syphon. Turn 12, and we finally have 5 mana. What a game! We're going to hold what we got. They bounce their nightmares back to hand at the end of our turn, but little do they know we can draw 3 instantly. Here comes the first nightmare, brace yourselves. We know the second nightmare will be their follow-up, so we'll fire off the Scrutiny now. We get another Scrutiny in the 3 cards we drew. We'll drop the land. We need the mana, but lands are always expendable. We'll draw more, I'm sure of it. Hour of Victory will be the next to go. I value the card draw more. This time around, let's draw first. We get a Springs and we'll play it out. We need that zoom zoom. We'll follow up with a Fear and get a Nightmare back. But we'll hold on to it. If we play it on our next turn, we'll get max speed finally. They bounce both nightmares again. That'll take us down to 2 life, so we've got to hang on to our nightmare, since that will get us max speed, as well as get us an extra point of life with the breaker. We get to max speed with the nightmare, it's all over but the crying. As expected, they use their nowhere to run to snipe our fear. That's not the danger, bro. They probably don't see it. They drew a land, isn't that so sad? Keep those pants on, bro. We'll sacrifice a nightmare for the scry and set up our future draws. On top we have an Hour of Victory and a land. We'll send the land on down, but we can use the tutor. They decide to do the same, but let's see what they do. We're getting a draw, so we'll be milling their top 2 cards away. They kept 1 on top, they're never getting whatever it is. They kept a Storm Chaser's talent. Surely to bounce their permanents again, but that's not happening now. We'll play out our Hour of Victory, but we'll hold up for now. Let's not tap out in case we need to gain life, and we should always draw with the Syphon. They go for bounce on their 2 enchantments, but we'll go ahead and draw a card first. Then we'll follow up by sacrificing the breaker for 4 life. That nightmare is not doing us in this turn. The nightmare will eat our removal. The second Syphon we have will likely seal the deal on this game. Let's use our Hour of Victory to dig up a card. At this point we could use more life. Another momentum breaker could make sure we don't die to a bounced nightmare. We really don't care about their removal in hand. The life is what matters. They play out a momentum breaker of their own. It'll take out our Syphon, but luckily we have draw. Check this out, bro. It's time for the second Syphon to make an appearance. That's double the draw, double the mill. They play out a Kaido, but he might be too late.
Did I scare you? I thrive in the dark.
We'll take a quick peek at how many cards they have left. That's 25 if you missed it. Every time we draw, we send 4 cards to the bin. And we've got 2 draws coming to us. That's right, we're making it rain. That's a third siphon that just showed up. It's never late, it always arrives exactly when it means to. They self-mill a pair of cards.
Your secrets
We didn't need the
stay
help.
hidden for long.
They were done on our next turn anyways. Soylent Trousers gives it up. GG's. Extra cheese. This is Ricardo. No wait, it's Rain I'll do. What a name, bro. We get a 3-lander this time with some card draw, a breaker, bounce, and a sweeper. It looks ugly, but the bounce gives us a chance to draw into some of our other weapons. We could play out the momentum breaker to make them toss a card, but we'll hold what we got. They're on Orzhov, so we don't know what they might be up to yet. They play out the mother bat, and I'm glad we held on to our breaker now. We could use the breaker, but let's use the nowhere to run first. You know, in case they play out something bigger next time. They must have changed something in the matrix. I did that backwards. I should have played the land after playing out the breaker. We should be on speed 2. They play out a tenacity, and they might be on the gain and drain combo, but we can clip their wings before they get their combo off. We'll play another springs and zoom to speed 2. We have to hold what we have and keep the bounce up in case they try to take us to combo town. It's unfortunate, but we do have to take the hit here. They don't have any more plays, so we'll bounce their tenacity and our breaker. They destroy our breaker, but we'll sacrifice it for a 2 spot instead. It's another card that will be in our grave, and we'll be able to fire off cover up and be able to collect evidence. We could be vulnerable here, but we'll fire off our scrutiny for 4 fresh ones. No siphons yet, but those should come along at some point. There's the tenacity yet again. And a bat friend as well. That's nice and all, bro, but we've got something that can shut this all down. Let's fire off a cover-up and collect evidence. The tenacity will be in the grave for us to pick, and that's exactly what we'll do. Yup, there's a conqueror right there. We just took out half of their combo. No need to look at anything else, we know their deck. We'll follow up with the monument. The great thing about milling them is if we nail something we want to take out, we can fire off the other cover up and snipe even more parts of their combo. They try to activate their man land, but we were prepared for this. They play out a Blood Witch, but it doesn't do a whole lot when it's sitting out there by itself. We draw a Nightmare and we'll play it out. We're pretty sure they'll toss the cut down, but that's fine. Everyone's favorite card, the Sheltered by Ghosts. We can respond to them trying to take our monument by using the exhaust ability and doubling the amount of cards in their grave. We could bounce their vampire at the end of the turn, but let's go ahead and use the Scry from the Nightmare to check out our top 2 cards. We have another monument and a fear, and we'll keep them both, and in that order. First things first, let's fire off the cover up to get our first monument back, and we can cripple their deck further. They knew we were about to be very surgical. GG's. Only a little bit of cheese. And that, my friends, is another satisfied customer.